Today's episode was great. ReZero back at it again with another great episode following last week's good episode. This episode was one of the most anticipated episodes for me personally. What happened in this episode is two of my favorite moments within Arc 4 and within the entire series as a whole. Also, this episode has my favorite death of the series, with Subaru being eaten alive. To me, nothing compares to this, simply because the uneasy, nerve-wrenching, and squeamish feeling that I felt while reading this death. It was definitely one of the worst things I ever had to read. In a good way though. And then to see it animated, it made it even better. I was so impressed with this episode. They did a really great job. As always though, we had to split this review into parts, 3 to be exact for this time. The first part is Subaru's conversation with Roswaal, second being Garfield's attack and the White Rabbits, third and last being Subaru telling of Return by Death. With those 3 set up, let's get into it. So first, we must talk about Subaru's conversation with Roswaal. Since I already know everything that happens this season, I don't want to dive fully into this and pretend like I don't know what's going to happen within the next episode, and also trying to avoid potential spoilers for everyone who has not read the novel of it. I don't want to be that disingenuous. So I really want to go over this moment and speak on it in terms of its relation to Roswaal's character. As we have known from season 1 that Roswaal was a very sneaky guy, and it was shown even more earlier this season. But with the information that we've gotten here, we see that Roswaal is all-knowing and almost omnipotent. Subaru is very suspicious of Beatrice and very wary of the way she is acting, especially with her containing a gospel. So for Roswaal to tell Subaru the magic word essentially behind Beatrice to get her on his side, it really brings out his manipulative and conniving nature. So I love how this moment really adds to Roswaal's character. Also, learning the information on the gospel was great, but I don't want to get into that because I don't want to spoil any of you. Otherwise, the moment was great. As I said, it's a good way to show off the uneasy nature of Roswaal, especially with the final question Subaru asks. And you just get this sort of feeling that Roswaal isn't the person he makes himself out to be. Now on to the second part, Garfield's attack and the White Rabbits. Before I get into Garfield, I want to go out of chronological order real quick and start with the White Rabbits. As I said previous, this is my favorite death and probably top 5 moments in the series. For me, it's just the gruesomeness at which Subaru died, and the way it was described in the novel was absolutely horrible. When it comes to the anime adaptation, I thought they did a great job with it. I, like many other people, was very afraid of the rabbits being CG because, as you have seen, it's a lot of them. So therefore, they were going to have to animate a lot of rabbits. So I was very scared of that. But thankfully, they did a great job of using the CG. It was only used on the horde, and they kept the camera constantly moving and shaking to distract from the fact that the rabbits were CG. I'm really happy in terms of the direction of the way they handled that, because they did a phenomenal job. Because when it comes to the individual rabbits, they were more or less hand-drawn. From what I can tell, I'm not the biggest stickler or understanding of how animation and art works, but from what I can see, they look more hand-drawn when it comes to the individual rabbits, when there's only 1, 2, maybe 3 on the screen. But when it comes to the horde in general, they used CG, but the way they used it was very light, and they kept the camera constantly moving so that we don't necessarily notice how bad or good it is. As for the death itself, it looks good. I am so happy they didn't censor anything within this episode. I was really afraid of censoring throughout this entire episode, and that kind of goes for the entire season as a whole, because I'm afraid that they won't show as much gruesome and gory stuff that happens. With this episode being animated as beautifully as it was, I have no fears. But however, I do have one complaint, or I guess it's sort of a complaint, I guess. I wish they visually showed the destruction of the rabbits a bit more, because the way it was described in the novel, we read about how they are biting the tongue and going into his mouth, biting his intestines, popping out from under his eye. It was a very gruesome scene in the way that it was described. But I really want them to push the gore level all the way up to 100. But nonetheless, they did an amazing job. Now it's time to talk about Garfield. And when it comes to Garfield's moment, I liked it, but I was not that thoroughly impressed. As I've always said in these reviews, I am that guy when it comes to watching this, because I've read the source material. And because I read the source material, obviously I have to say it was done a lot better. But when I say a lot better, I mean by a far margin. Now the moment was good with Garfield attacking, and by the way, I didn't expect Garfield to be that large as he was, but overall I felt the scene was very lackluster in terms of my bias towards the novel's depiction of it. If I were to look at it from an anime only perspective, I would have thought it was pretty good, but coming from my biased perspective, it was very lackluster, but it was still good nonetheless. And also, before I switch to the last part, I want to say why Otto? Why they had to do my man's Otto like that? I'm hurt. I'm very hurt. Otto is best boy, and it hurt my heart so much to see him get killed. The last part to talk about is of course Subaru admitting to Ekidona that he has returned by death. This scene is really beautiful, and what makes the scene so beautiful is the feeling that you get from Subaru, because for the first time Subaru has a weight lifted off his chest and is finally able to express his pain and torture that he has been going through ever since he came to this world. He finally has someone to relate to or tell his problems to without the lurk of fear being around him. And that feeling of relief, stress, and anxiety going away from Subaru, as a viewer, it feels wonderful, and I can just only imagine how Subaru must feel. So I thought this moment was absolutely perfect. Well, that is all I needed to cover for the episode. I hope you all really enjoyed the episode. Tell me your thoughts on it in the comment section. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new for more ReZero content. Follow me on Twitter, that's the place where I be booling. Join the Discord, that's where we all be chatting. And of course, after each episode, come to the episode discussion while it's live or catch it once it's re-uploaded. Do whatever works better for you. But thank you all for watching, and goodbye.